Welcome to Sixth Row Center, the best seat in the house for movie chat. I'm Heath, once again without JD, because today I'll be doing part two of my quickie reviews of the movies I saw in 2025. Last time it was the lesser or poorer films of the year. Today it will be the better ones that I saw. Again, I'll be going worst to best, but not in numeric order. Instead, it'll be like doing groupings that I'll explain as I go. So, just to be clear, if there are 10 movies in a particular group, I'm not going to be listing them worst to best. It's just going to be all 10 in that group. Just a quickie recap, the groups that I've already done. The first one was the irredeemably bad ones. Then just the regular bad ones were next, followed by the very average ones. These movies weren't good, they weren't bad, they were just eh. And finally, the movies that I thought were slightly better than that. Today, we're going to start with the movies that are actually good. In fact, let me just say, every movie I'll mention today was good. Some are better than others, but I enjoyed every single film on this list. Even if there was bad stuff, the good overall outweighed it. Once again, just like the last ones, we're going to be going fast. A quick thought or two on each flick, and here we go. The first of the just plain good movies is Heads of State. Idris Elba and John Cena play the British Prime Minister and the American President, respectively, so you know the bullshit factor is already at 100. However, this is just silly action comedy. That's what it's supposed to be, and I thought it was fun. I always like Idris Elba, and you know what? Even though John Cena plays the same character in every movie, it works in this one. Next is Together. Oh man, at times I thought this was just a little too ridiculous. But then I kind of went with it. Dave Franco and Alison Brie are a married couple who get some weird liquid on them, and it makes their bodies fuse together, and they spend the rest of the movie trying to stay separated. Kudos to Damon Harriman in a supporting role. He's an Australian actor that should get a lot more work. I've enjoyed him in many things that I've seen him in. Alison Brie is totally hot. And a side note, I had no idea she's actually married to Dave Franco in real life. And a side note, I'm just really glad that David Franco's brother, James Franco, who was definitely the better actor of the two, is finally getting over the whole cancellation thing. I believe he's got no less than 5 movies in post-production right now that should be coming out in 2026. Next movie is Keeper. Osgood Perkins directs this little horror flick where Tatiana Maslany's boyfriend, Rossif Sutherland, the son of the great Donald and half-brother of Kiefer, takes her on their 1-year anniversary to a cabin in the woods for the first time that he shares with his totally obnoxious cousin. This one's a little out there, but I did like it, and I especially like the direction by Osgood Perkins, who, by the way, is Tony Perkins' son. Just a cool little tidbit there. Riff Raff is next. Ex-criminal Ed Harris is trying to live quietly with his new wife, Gabrielle Union, and her son, Miles J. Harvey, when his ex-wife, Rita Coolidge, shows up with their son. Rita Coolidge and Ed Harris share a son. It's Louis Pullman and his pregnant girlfriend, Emanuela Posticini, who are on the run from mafia hitmen Bill Murray and Pete Davidson. The dynamic between all these excellent actors, well, except maybe Pete Davidson, but the dynamic between all of them, that they all share this intertwined backstory, it makes for a lot of amusement and a pretty satisfying climax. Next up is Tornado, which has Tim Roth as the leader of a gang of criminals tracking down a young Japanese girl played by Koki in 1790s Scotland. It's a thin plot, but the chase and her defense of herself against these bad guys is just intriguing enough to make it on my list here. Next, we have Ballerina, the John Wick spinoff with Ana de Armas. Of the 5 John Wick movies, this one's definitely the 5th best. But hey, I like Ana de Armas. I like John Wick movies. It has all the usual suspects like Ian McShane, Angelica Houston, Lance Reddick, even Keanu Reeves makes a cameo. And Gabriel Byrne is the bad guy, so there's enough here. It's not great, but it's adequate. Next, we have Mountainhead. This was a funny little comedy with Steve Carell, Jason Schwartzman, Corey Michael Smith, and Rami Youssef. They play 4 billionaire tech bro best friends who spend a weekend each year at one or the other's resorts, basically to compare fortunes and congratulate each other. Only this year, the group are split over a new technology that one of the guys created, and another one wants to exploit. And it causes them all to kind of take sides and eventually turn to murder to get their way. It's really funny. But it does get a little too clever for its own good at times, especially there's a lot of this really tech jargony dialogue. It's funny, but it's kind of hard to follow. Overall, the movie is very funny. Next is Code 3. Rainn Wilson is a totally burned out EMT who wants nothing more than to quit his job for something as boring as possible. So he's doing one last shift in the ambulance with partner Lil Rel Howery and first-time intern Amy Carrero. This gets a little heavy-handed, but it really does have some heart, some poignant moments, some powerful moments, and some damn funny moments. Rainn Wilson gives a good performance. Lil Rel Howery always plays the same character, but his character is funny, so it's good. This was a solid flick. Lurker is next. This was a really weird film, and there was a lot that I didn't like about it, and yet it had me thinking about it like days after the movie was over, which for me is a hugely good sign. Alex Russell's script was a story that I don't think I'd ever seen before, with an ending that was quite profound. In fact, it's the ending that I couldn't stop thinking about it. Next is Dust Bunny. Such a great story. So get this. A little girl is afraid of the monster under her bed because it ate her parents and 3 sets of foster parents. One day, she sees that her next-door neighbor, who's one of my favorite, it's Mads Mikkelsen. He's this amazing super spy, and she hires him to kill the monster. Meanwhile, the spy's agency, the people that the spy works for, now wants this little girl dead because she's seen his face. And the agent himself has this army of bad guys who are out to kill him. And the FBI is investigating all the little girl's missing parents. There's so much cool stuff going on here, and yet it did not coalesce into a good movie until the very end, when all these different factions kind of meet up for a huge shootout. That was really great, but the movie on the whole was just good, which sucks because it had so much potential. It's an Accident is next. Now, this is getting a lot of Oscar buzz for Best Foreign Film. Written and directed by Iranian filmmaker Jabbar Panahi, it's about former political prisoner Vahid, who was tortured by an infamous secret policeman named Pegleg Egbal. Now, all the prisoners are blindfolded, so they never really get to see the faces of their tormentors. Years after his release, one day, Vahid is certain that he's found Egbal because he recognizes the sound of the prosthetic leg. But he's not sure, so he kidnaps the guy, and he tries to find other people who've also been tortured by him to help identify him. It's a really great idea. Unfortunately, a lot of the film is just kind of driving around, finding somebody who may or may not know who the guy is, and it's like, hey, is this Egbal? I don't know, I can't tell, let's go find somebody else. And they find somebody else, and it's like, hey, is this the guy? And they're like, I don't know, maybe we should find somebody else. And it gets repetitive and slow in parts. Yet, it's a very powerful and strong story. Words of War is next. This is a true story about Russian reporter Anna Politkovskaya, played wonderfully by Maxine Peake, who went against her government to report the truth about the war between Russia and Chechnya. It makes her something of a celebrity, though infamous as far as the government is concerned. The cast is superb. Jason Isaacs as her husband, who is also a journalist and a political commentator, only he's kind of pro-government, and Ciarán Hinds as her editor. This was just a plain, interesting story about something I previously had no knowledge of. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. You know, as far as Mission Impossible movies go, it was fine. You know what you're getting. You're getting good action, some cool stunts by Tom Cruise, few twists, and Ethan Hunt doing something clever and daring and saving the day. Except that for the grand finale of 8 movies, it was a little underwhelming. On the other hand, it totally played as a nostalgia piece. Like, every bit of the previous 7 films was thoroughly referenced. So if you want a stroll down Mission Impossible memory lane, this one delivers. How to Train Your Dragon is next, a live-action remake of the 2010 cartoon about the war between the Vikings and dragons, until the great warrior chieftain, played by the wonderful Gerard Butler, who voiced the character in the cartoon as well, I believe. His son who just totally can't get out of his way, he's a weakling, it's Mason Thames, befriends a rare breed of dragon. This hits all the beats of every DreamWorks animated movie. It's a solid story, it's got a happy ending. I never saw the original cartoon, but I'd be willing to bet that this is like beat for beat exactly the same movie, which kind of begs the question, why bother at all? But it was okay. Materialists is next, Dakota Johnson, who's kind of growing on me. Well, Dakota Johnson plays a materialist, somebody who only cares about money and things and possessions. She's in a love triangle with Pedro Pascal, who is insanely wealthy, and he's perfect in every way. And her former boyfriend, Chris Evans, who, kind of gorgeous, dreamy, but he's poor. I mean, You know who she's going to pick, right? I had issues with this film, but there were parts that I felt were really deep, and it was a movie that made me think, which is something that I definitely value. Swipe is another true story. This one's about the woman, played by Lily James, who did the heavy lifting in the creation and success of the dating app Tinder, and how she gets screwed over by her male dominated company. It's something of a Me Too story, but it's a really good, interesting story. The Actor is next. I loved the beginning of this surreal fantasy tale that drops you into a strange noir world where you have no idea what's going on, no idea who's who, no idea who to trust. It kind of loses its way, it doesn't fulfill its potential, but there was enough there. It was a really short movie, and it keeps you guessing throughout. Next is The Roses, a second remake of the novel The War of the Roses by Warren Adler. I saw the first one, but I barely remember it. What I recall is I didn't like it much. It's about a couple who's in the midst of a divorce, and despite all the terrible things they do to each other, Michael Douglas still loves Kathleen Turner, but it seemed like no matter what, she was just a mean bitch who hated him. Now, this one's much better. It's Benedict Cumberbatch in the Michael Douglas role, and Olivia Colman, who I love, but I might have been miscast in this. She's playing the Kathleen Turner role. They really do love each other. In fact, they go through great lengths in the movie to show you that these two people really love and care about each other. And the story explores how, through misunderstandings and accidents and just plain life, a really strong marriage can fall apart. It's a great premise. It got a lot right. But where they did miss was, well, some of the supporting characters who were supposed to be funny. I didn't think they were funny at all. And the biggest thing was Olivia Colman's character, who, while both spouses did mean things to each other, she's a total cunt at times. I mean, it just went too far. You're supposed to believe that they really love each other despite things that are going on. And that kind of hurt the story. But overall, it was funny, it was a good story, and I did enjoy it. Next, we have The Monkey, Osgood Perkins again, doing another horror film. I went into this thinking it was like some serious, horror story, sort of like the last movie, Keeper. But when I eventually realized that I shouldn't be taking it seriously, it got much better. I really started to enjoy it. I thought this movie was hilarious. Some crazy horror stuff. Also, as with Keeper, Tatiana Maslany had a small role, and she was really funny. Next, we have Rental Family. Okay, I'm going to be hard on this one because even though it is a good movie, it could have been so much better. I had definite issues with the structure. I talk about hating movies that have no plots, and people don't seem to understand what I'm talking about, how you can have a story without a plot. And perhaps maybe I need to do an episode just on plots. Well, this movie did have a plot, but it didn't start until the last 20 minutes. I mean, how can you can't do that? This was a good movie. You'll enjoy it. You'll laugh, you'll cry, your heart will be warmed, but it could have been so much better. Next is Known As, a true story, another true story. Vince Vaughn opens a restaurant with a bunch of real Italian grandmothers as the cooks, and they each make their own special family dishes. It's very sweet, it's very heartwarming, very sentimental. Vince Vaughn's excellent. He can totally lead a movie, and the very cute Linda Cardellini is his love interest. But it's Lorraine Bracco, Brenda Vaccaro, Talia Shire, and Susan Sarandon as the adorable and funny grandmothers that kind of make this movie. Next up is K-pop Demon Hunters. Yes! K-pop Demon Hunters. Okay, I went into this anime movie very skeptical, but it was fun. It was a good story, it was good characters, good music, and I'm not a K-pop person at all, but I was definitely humming the tunes. Next up is Hedda, based on the classic play Hedda Gabler by Henrik Ibsen, which, full disclosure, not my favorite play. Writer-director Nia DaCosta made some real choices with this one. Some were more bold than others, like the casting of Tessa Thompson as Hedda Gabler. Now, she ain't going to play as a Norwegian in 1890, so the first thing that got changed was the setting to 1950s England. I mean, okay. Then, obviously, certain characters' races were changed. Certain characters' genders were changed. Certain characters' sexual orientations were changed. I mean, I know why you do it. It's sort of a cheap way to modernize the story and to immediately get people who might not care about the movie to like it without even watching it. But did it help the movie? Did it make it a better story? I don't know about that. But all that aside, the biggest, boldest choice was changing who lived and who died at the end of the movie. I mean, it changed the whole point of the story, and I'll leave that to you to decide if you thought it was better or not. On the other hand, if you like characters who are plotting and scheming against each other and that sort of intrigue, you're going to love Hedda. No Other Choice is next, another Oscar-buzz foreign film. It's Park Chan-wook, who adapts The Axe by Donald Westlake, about a guy who loses his job, a job that very few people can do. And in order to get hired for the same position, he creates this scheme. One, he's going to kill somebody who already has that job. And then two, he's going to kill off everybody whose resumes might be better than his. This movie really challenges an audience. The beginning was painfully slow, and yet it's one of those movies where the action just starts spiraling. You don't even realize it, and all of a sudden it's just spiraled and spiraled until eventually it goes straight to Crazy Town, but in a good way. There are some really clever turns in this one, and while I didn't love it while I was watching it, it's grown on me, and it's one of the first movies that I saw in 2025 that I know I want to see this movie again. Eddington is up next. I have a hate-hate relationship with Ari Aster. I think it's because I was so excited to see Beau is Afraid, his movie before this, and I just thoroughly hated it. Eddington was much better. Now, don't get me wrong, this was an incredibly flawed film. I mean, it had huge problems, and yet I loved watching it. It was sort of the opposite of No Other Choice, especially as it was chugging through the climax. It was a totally wild ride, totally fun, but it's one of those movies where after the movie's over and you think about it, it's like you can really tear it apart. Bone Lake. Full disclosure, my really good friend Josh wrote Bone Lake, so I have to love it, right? No, that's totally not true. I really did like this movie. It has a great beginning, psychological erotic thriller with one mysterious couple playing a series of sexually charged mind games on the other for reasons that aren't apparent. Unfortunately, when the reasons do become apparent, it's a little silly, and then things kind of devolve into a generic slasher film, but the movie's fun, and especially the first half. The next movie is Another Simple Favor. I watched the first one, which is just called A Simple Favor, and that was adorably cute and funny, with Anna Kendrick, perfect as a dorky vlogging single mother who somehow becomes best friends with the town's coolest chick, who is Blake Lively, just before she goes missing and is feared dead. This was such a cute film. The second one picks up where it left off and sort of boosts the plot up to 11. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It was a bit wacky at times, but this movie was still good. Next, we have The World Will Tremble. It's a Holocaust story, and there have been so many, it's tough to find something new in this genre. This was the true story about two Jewish men who were able to escape a Nazi death camp and give the first ever first-hand account of what was really happening to European newspapers. This was real powerful stuff. Next is All the Devils Are Here, a slick, contained thriller about a small group of crooks forced to stay in a house together. Now, no one trusts each other, and a few are really deceitful bastards. And after everyone gets on everyone else's nerves, things boil over. There was good in this, there was bad in this, there was a kind of a dumb twist at the end, but the tension stays strong throughout. After the Hunt is next. Now, I said it in the first video, I really don't like Ayo Edebiri, and I explained why in the last episode. I can't stand her character. I couldn't stand her character in this. I'm not sure if I was supposed to really sympathize with her, or if I was supposed to hate her as much as I did. Much of this film was truly distasteful. It was one of those Me Too stories, and yet, for some reason, it really stuck with me. There were a lot of great performances from the other actors, and it really makes you think, or at least it did for me. Roof Man is next. I don't know. There's just something eminently likable about Channing Tatum. It's yet another true story about a guy who is jailed for breaking into and robbing a series of McDonald's. And then he breaks out of jail and he hides in a Toys R Us for like months and months, all the while having a life in town. He continues stealing. He's even having a relationship with the equally likable Kirsten Dunst. This movie has a lot of heart. You can't help but feeling sympathy for Channing Tatum, even though you kind of know how things are going to turn out in the end. Dracula is next. This is, of course, Bram Stoker's Dracula, a retelling of the same story. It's a French film by Luc Besson, although it was shot in English, and stars Caleb Landry Jones as the Count, and Zoe Blue, who sometimes is the spitting image of her mother, Rosanna Arquette, and at other times she just looks nothing like her. Anyway, she plays the Mina Harker role. The always awesome Christoph Waltz is a priest who's basically Van Helsing. It's the same Dracula story that we've seen a million times, but Besson makes it different because he puts the situations a little over the top, and bigger than that, he changes the ending. And I have to admit that I liked this changed ending. It sort of giving the cursed Dracula maybe a little bit of redemption. It's kind of cool. Death of a Unicorn. This is another one that I didn't feel quite lived up to its potential. But the cast made this one work. Jenna Ortega, who I've really begun to like, is the straight man, and a bunch of just really funny actors surround her. Paul Rudd, Téa Leoni, who isn't normally comedic, but she's good in this one. Will Poulter, who is, every time I see him, he is a trip. And the amazing Stephen Root, and one of my all-time favorite character actors, Richard E. Grant. It was just a great cast, and it made the movie really good. Next up is The Ugly Stepsister. This is a Norwegian film that's a retelling of Cinderella from the perspective of the ugly stepsister. You really feel sympathy for this poor girl who at first has her mother pushing her, but eventually it's her own accord. She does everything in her power to make herself look beautiful so that she may win the love of the prince. The movie is done very, very well, and it's funny and scary and just plain weird. Green and Gold is next. A simple, well-executed true story, another true story, about an old farmer played perfectly by Craig T. Nelson, who makes a bet with the bank that his favorite football team, the Green Bay Packers, are going to get to the Super Bowl. And if they do, then he gets an extension. He gets extra time to pay off the debt of his ranch. It's a nice, heartwarming story, and it doesn't end how you think it will. Next up is Anemone. Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the absolute greatest actors ever, not just of our generation, ever. And this seems like it was specifically written, I believe it was written by he and his son, just to give him monologues as Oscar bait. And while every speech he gives is memorable and very well acted, there was just no plot in this film. And it's too bad because not only was the acting top notch, but it was shot gorgeously by Ronan Day-Lewis, who's Daniel's son. I would love to see him shoot something with an actual story. But Anemone is worth seeing, if only for the performances, not just Daniel Day-Lewis, but also Sean Bean and Emily Watson. Sentimental Value, another Oscar bait film. This is another Norwegian film by Joachim Trier, with Stellan Skarsgård turning in a brilliant performance as an older, past his prime, very famous director who's trying to make one last, very personal movie. And he wants his estranged actress daughter, Renate Reinsve, to star in it. And she doesn't want to. It's emotional, but it's very, very slow paced. And the script does have some cool tricks that it uses, especially tying certain elements from the beginning into the end. I didn't love this like a lot of people did. Again, it was very slow. For whatever reason, I just didn't sympathize with the characters. And one thing I was always told when I was writing script is that you should never make a movie about people making the movie, and that's what this is. But there is a lot to like about this film. Up next is Mr. Burton. It's the true story, again, of Richard Burton as a teenager. And for those of you who are too young to know who Richard Burton is, he was one of the greatest actors of the 50s through the 70s. Now, Toby Jones is wonderful as young Richie's mentor, and Harry Lawtrey does a great job transforming from this unknown Welsh kid into the Richard Burton, and he shows you every step of the way. It was pretty cool. Finally, for this group, we have Pillion. Now, I never read 50 Shades of Grey, nor did I see the movie, but Mrs. Sixth Row Center did. And she said it was about a master and slave relationship written by someone who knew absolutely nothing about those sorts of relationships. Now, whereas 50 Shades was about a hetero couple, Pillion centers on a gay couple, and it is very realistic. You know, I've spoke ad nauseum about my troubles with plotless movies, and this movie has no plot. It's simply an exploration of this sort of a relationship. But as such, it's totally engaging, and it has a lot to say. And Alexander Skarsgård, and especially Harry Melling, truly give excellent performances in this. So that's the first group. It turns out that this episode's only going to have two groups. You heard the just plain good movies, but now you're going to get to the even better than movies. They're not great, they're not quite great, but they're better than good. And we're going to start with Echo Valley. This is a great little self-contained thriller with Julianne Moore and Domhnall Gleeson trying to outwit each other, and it comes to a very satisfying conclusion. Play Dirty is next, a Shane Black heist film based on another Donald Westlake book. Was his series called Parker. There have been over half a dozen movies based on this series with people from like Robert Duvall, Lee Marvin, even Jim Brown played Parker once. This one is Marky Mark playing the part, and his sidekick is Lakeith Stanfield, who I really like. It's just plain fun. I always like Shane Black movies. Splitsville is next, and thank God the raunch comedy has returned. I don't know who Michael Angelo Covino and Kyle Marvin are, but they've been working together a while, I guess, and they're freaking funny in this, and so is Splitsville. It's not for the easily offended, though. Playdate is next. Okay, I do not like Kevin James. I do not like Kevin James movies. So it's great that even though this is a Kevin James movie, it's technically led by Alan Rickman. So if you like the Reacher series and you've always wanted to see one really long episode that is a completely silly, stupid comedy, you're going to love this because it is action-packed and it is funny. Next up is Everything is Going Great. This is a story about a down on its luck thespian family, and it went in directions I just simply didn't expect it to go. It's a nice, sweet little movie. It gets a little heavy-handed at times, but it has terrific performances by Bryan Cranston, Allison Janney, and especially Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, who I'd never seen before. Eleanor the Great is next. Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut stars national treasure 95-year-old June Squibb. Now, this is a good movie, but I've been wondering if the main reason that I liked it was because it's a story about kind of Jewish culture, and I'm Jewish. And while I know that has something to do with it, I think it was even more so because the story's about the different reasons why people lie and how grief can be experienced differently by different people. That just really resonated with me. It made it a profound story for me personally, hopefully for you. Next up is John Candy, I Like Me. This is a documentary. I mean, hey, it was really tragic that John Candy died at the age of 43, so who wouldn't want to spend 2 more hours with him, learning about his life, learning about how wonderful he was in ways you never even knew? This was a really good, heartwarming documentary. Next is Heart Eyes. I totally love this one with Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt. Kudos to the writers because this movie works great as a slasher film, but it also works great as a comedy. It works great as a romance. There are excellent twists. It's got a satisfying climax. There were a few points off because it is just crazy, over the top, ridiculous. But this one was truly one of the better movies of the year. Marty Supreme is next. Now, this had a ton of hype. Timothée Chalamet took home the Golden Globe for Best Actor, and he was great, except that his character is pretty much a dick throughout the entire movie. It makes it impossible to root for him, and yet, by the time you get to the end, I was rooting for him, so that made up for a lot of flaws in this one. Neighborhood Watch is next. Jack Quaid as a man with mental issues and Jeffrey Dean Morgan as a guy who was forced into retirement as a security guard team up to find an abducted girl. This one totally surprised me. There was something about the humanity of the characters that had me really caring about them and wanting them to succeed through all sorts of obstacles. I really liked this movie. The next movie is The Phoenician Scheme. This was somewhat convoluted. It was hard for me to follow. That was a problem for me throughout the whole movie. However, it's a Wes Anderson movie, and I love me some Wes Anderson. And it has all the trappings of a Wes Anderson movie. It has the quirky characters, the gorgeous color palette, a gazillion cameos by all sorts of actors. They're all fun. And one of the best things was Michael Cera as a guy who may or may not be a Norwegian entomologist. Next up is Sinners. Now, I know everyone and his mother thinks this is the greatest movie ever made. I just don't see it. I mean, I liked it. It was a very solid vampire story with a few plot holes. Yes, I understand all the black culture symbolized in it. I was understanding it while I was watching it, and even if I didn't, I have certainly seen enough people do reviews about it since it was released. But while it was interesting, it didn't make my viewing experience any better. But I'll tell you what I did love. This movie was shot so beautifully. The fight sequences, some of the dance and music sequences, call me crazy, but the landscapes were like gorgeous paintings. I could totally see Autumn Durrell Arkapaw taking home the Best Cinematography Oscar at the awards. Next up is Henry Johnson. This is a David Mamet play adaptation, and Mamet is, a master of dialogue. And this is basically a series of conversations on morality, manipulation, individual and social responsibility, and masculine power. Really deep and profound. This is a good film. Up next is Violent Ends. This was an excellent thriller. It's about 3 different parts of the same crime family all out to kind of take over the organization for themselves. There's no new ground here per se, but it's done really well. It keeps the tension ratcheted, and it keeps you surprised right up until the end. Nobody 2 is next, and for full disclosure, the first Nobody film is in my all-time top 50. That's how much I loved Bob Odenkirk's turn as an over-the-hill CIA cleaner who gets pissed off one day for all the right reasons. I went into Nobody 2 fully expecting to hate it because you just can't live up to what was so great about the original. And yet, while it wasn't even in the same realm as the first one, it was a really good watch. It had everything from the first one, but not quite as good. And to be honest, that's more than enough to be a top film in 2025. Companion is next. Jack Quaid, yet again. He stars as a guy on a couple's getaway with friends at a remote cabin, which all unravels into chaos after the revelation that one of the guests is a robot. And chaos is the right word. Now, Mrs. Sixth Row Center, again, she guessed some of the twists in this, but I totally didn't see any of them. So it kept me guessing from start to finish, and I really liked one of the characters was Sophie Thatcher, who for me is becoming the poor woman's Anya Taylor-Joy. I thought she was really good in this. Next is Naked Gun. If you like the original Naked Gun movies, you're going to love this. I mean, that's all there is to it. The same style of humor. I wasn't sure about Liam Neeson in the Leslie Nielsen role, but he totally sticks the landing. And they kept a lot of good comic actors around him to chew up the scenery. Also, there was Danny Houston, who's very funny as the bad guy. Next up is Sovereign. This is another true story about a guy and his son who were involved in the sovereign citizen movement. If you've never heard of that, you should look it up because it's a real thing. I found this film very jarring. It kind of changes how you see things, how our government, our banking system. I think many will be turned off by the subject matter and kind of sort of political leanings, but I don't think it's about any of that in the end. All I can say is that after the movie was over, I thought about this for a long time. It was produced by Zach Kreger, who did Barbarian and Weapons, and it totally fits with those sorts of films, and Nick Offerman is truly fantastic in this one. Next up, another movie that I totally couldn't stop thinking about was called Anniversary. Now, this one was specifically about radicalized politics, and to be honest, that's something I actually really enjoy. I think if you don't look at this film as necessarily paralleling real life or proselytizing, just see the story being laid out in front of you as it is, I think it's a tight, dystopian, mind-bending thriller, and it has a lot to say. Although in the first 10 minutes I did figure out what the twist ending was going to be, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment at all. And here we go, we're at the last film, and it's Nuremberg, about the Nazi war trials of the leaders of the Nazi party that were, still around to prosecute, especially Hermann Goring. This was a powerful film that may have even scored higher if not for Rami Malek, who simply is just not believable as the army psychologist with a mission to determine Goring's mental state to see, one, if he's mentally competent to stand trial, and two, to kind of try to attempt to extract from him what his defense might be. It's amazing how Russell Crowe, doing a barely passable German accent, is so powerful and believable as the fiendishly clever Goring, and we're supposed to believe that Malik's weirdo doctor can match wits with him. But on the whole, this was a very engaging story, and if you don't know how that ends, it's a true story, you'll be pretty shocked. It's a great ending. And that's it. That's my better movies for 2025. What'd you think of them? Did I talk you into watching any movies that you'd never heard of? Were there movies that you hated that I liked? Or were there ones that weren't even on this list that you really loved? Though you have to wait, because there's going to be one last episode, and that's going to be my top 15 movies of 2025, so it's possible those movies will be on that episode. I'm probably going to go into a little more detail, since there are going to be fewer movies to talk about. And that's going to wrap up things right now from the Sixth Row Center. I hope you come back for the next one. Until then, I got to run, because there's a movie just about to start.